And is that, I would also argue that I think the base of speaking multiple languages and probably the intent of countering what you had, the stutter, which you have worked upon. I think that the base of multiple languages and the intent to make sure that you're good in your own ways, which you want to master in your own way, and which you are on the journey and have seen in many ways and forms. I think there is a credit to be given to a bit more multilingualism.
Sure.
But having said that, I agree what you're saying, that that's the first curiosity. Could you also talk about from the journey of being curious to identifying tools? So there's two parts. I'm curious. I want to go onto the moon. Yes, I want to go to the moon. But from the idea of want to go to the moon and literally finding something and sitting on it and going to the moon and landing there safely.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
I agree that, so before I answer the question, I do agree that speaking 4 languages has taught my brain to think of language in a different way, one which those who are not able to speak the more languages wouldn't understand. You speak other languages
You're
too,
right.
so our brains know how to calculate speech in a different way. The tools. Through stuttering, I learned that if we're not clear and steady and concise with what we say, people will not understand us. So a tool which I learned is to slow my speech down. Sounds easy. Most people struggle to speak slowly because in our head it sounds too slow. Slow leads to cadence, and cadence leads to a better understanding of what we say. In my case, it means I can control my fluency, which allows me to do step 2, mind mapping. Slowing down has allowed me to sense the words I'm approaching in a sentence, and I now know if I'm approaching a word that I can't say or I will stutter in, I mind map, which is like playing Tetris. I look for ways to swap the blocks, and I find ways to pronounce words that I can't say. And the third tool is breathing. So I've learned to breathe through my sentences. They're the more easily accessible one. The more complicated one is learning to speak to music.
Oh, okay. So could you start as a young boy? So we'll come to these tools and then we'll elaborate on that later. But as a young boy from 10, when do you got the idea, or did you approach some specialists to work with you? And what was that process look like? Sorry, I'm delving into it, but I think it's very intriguing to know.
Yeah, let's go in any direction. As a kid, I used to watch my dad. So my dad was the lead guitarist and a vocalist in a band called the Just Five. You rock.
Just 5.
Just Five. And he used to MC events. He was the chairman of the Rotary Club. He was a wonderful speaker, still is a wonderful speaker and storyteller. And I used to watch my dad and think, oh, man, how do you do that? And it scared me. So I would be curious about that. How did it prompt my thinking and my curiosity was I wanted to understand how my dad did that. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question here. I wanted to understand how my dad did that. So I used to watch him. And while I watched him, I used to practice on my own. And it's like a magician who practices a card trick 10,000 times before they do it on the streets or on stage. It was that process.